Just start by saying my apologies for not uploading for a little while. It's been a very busy time for us, so I haven't really had much chance to upload videos. So please accept my apologies for that. But also accept my thanks, because I think we're just about to tip over 500 subscribers for the channel, which is absolutely mind-blowing. It's brilliant. So thank you so much to everyone who subscribed. So today's video, I wanted to address a question that a couple of customers out there who've emailed the channel have asked. How do you get a bargain? How do you get the best deal from a UK gardener? Well, I have explained this to customers in the past, and my answer to this question can cause a bit of, I think, cognitive dissonance among some customers. But in short, my answer is, don't go for the lowest hourly rate. And in fact, don't ask the hourly rate at all. Now, why would I suggest this? Well, first off, a lot of established gardeners, established tradesmen, they regard somebody, we get quotes like this, by the way, all the time, but it can be regarded as a red flag if one of your first questions to that tradesman is, what's your hourly rate? What that tells that tradesman is you're not going to be a good paying customer, or he might potentially be a difficult customer. Okay, it's not the case 9 times out of 10, but if you look out there on YouTube and you look out in the kind of community of tradesmen, that unfortunately is kind of a generally accepted rule, that people who just go in, first question, what's your hourly rate? You know, that tradesman is probably going to decline the work if they're well established. So if that's your first question to the tradesman, then you run the risk of filtering out really good, strong, experienced tradesmen who have the right tools, who could do a really good job. So don't ask what's your hourly rate as the first question. What should the first question be? Well, in my opinion, the first question you should give to a tradesman is, how much experience have you got? And what tools will you be using to do the job? Now, what do I mean? Why would I ask this first? Well, the hourly rate argument, I think particularly for gardeners, as little as maybe 15, 20 years ago, it made an awful lot of sense, actually. It was a really logical thing to ask. And the reason was, most gardeners, not all, but most, outside of the lawnmower, the tools were mainly hand tools. So the odds were, 9 out of 10 times, no matter who you called, they were going to be using hand tools. So as they were using hand tools, the work would take a long time to complete. So it makes sense that you knew what their hourly rate was. But also that worked for the tradesmen too, because they often didn't know how long the job would take using hand tools. So it worked for them as well. It was a good situation for gardeners, that, you know, if we had a good hourly rate, the customer got a good deal, but also you were covering your time that you were there. So it worked for the gardener and it worked for the customer, as I say, as little as 15, 20 years ago. And I think that argument persists from that time. However, nowadays, most gardeners who are in this and doing this properly for a living, you'll find that we're using power tools to do the work. So we aren't turning up to cut hedges with pairs of shears. We're using proper 2-stroke equipment, we're using proper hedge cutters, and a lot of guys out there now are starting to use the really good cordless equipment that's coming onto the market too. So what this means is gardeners are able to undertake and complete a lot more work to a lot higher standard in a lot lower time. So an hourly rate, really, nowadays, it doesn't work for a lot of gardeners, because it negates them going out and buying those tools. So where we're at right now is, if you hire someone on hourly rate alone, you could end up actually getting ripped off. Now I'm going to explain what I mean. Say, hypothetically, we had a plot of land that was, say, 20 metres by 10 metres. And what you wanted was that plot of land digging over. You want it cultivating, ready for you to plant stuff into it. Now imagine you've got one quote from a chap who turns up and says, well, okay, I can do it. I'm going to use my rotavator in the back of the van. 100 quid, I should be able to get this all turned over very quickly to a very high standard. It'll be all nice and crumbly. The soil will be ready to plant in. And then you've got another guy who turns up and says, well, I'll do it, and I'll do it for £20 an hour or £15 an hour. Now, odds are the guy who's charging that and is not charging a fixed rate, it's harder for you to make a living charging by the hour. And charging a low amount like that by the hour as well, the odds are that tradesman is not going to have the same equipment that the guy who's charging a fixed rate is. It's not always the case, don't get me wrong, but the odds are that that chap is not going to have the same equipment as a chap who's charging a fixed rate. So they might turn up and to do the same job with a hand tool, which is what they're likely to have, so i.e. with a spade, to dig that plot, it might take them 6 or 7 hours. Okay? So it's close to the same price, or you're potentially paying a bit more for that guy to do that job. But what you're getting at the end then is a less good result as well. That guy could be very hardworking, he could be a very motivated, good chap, but the reality is he's not going to get that soil as crumbly and as well turned over and as well done with a spade as somebody is with professional equipment like a rotavator. It's just impossible for him to turn the soil the same amount of times and do the same amount of work that somebody with professional equipment can. So what you're going to end up with by going with the guy just on hourly rate, you're going to potentially end up having to pay more, and you're not going to get as good a result at the end. So what I advise customers to do, the first question you should say, questions you should be given to the tradesman are, what's your experience of doing this? And then let them tell you what their experience of doing that kind of job is. Let them give you a plan for how they would do it. And if that sounds good, then ask them, what kind of equipment would you be using for doing this? And then once they show you what equipment they're using for doing it, if it's good professional equipment, then ask them to quote. Then ask them what rate they want to do the job. Don't just go for the guy who's charging £15 an hour. If you go for that, you're not going to get the end result you want, and you could end up paying more. Thanks, guys.